another episode. I am in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico this week. We're having our team building week. It's basically our yearly retreat and having a lot of fun. We're almost 400 people, and I've taken over the design and UX teams area. I've kicked everyone out so we could have this. So enjoy the scenery in the background, and I'm excited to have our guest today, Jeff Hux. Did I say that right? Haka, who's the CEO of Work for Impact. And let's get you introduced. And before we do that, I want to welcome Carlos, who's a co-producer and co-host. He's actually here also in Hermosillo. And we have Laura in the background too, who might chime in for a question or two, who's our co-host in training. So Ruben, please take us so everyone can see us. And great, thank you. Ruben's in the background. He's our CTO.
Yeah.
So Jeff, welcome to the show. Now, Jeff, you're checking in from Hong Kong, correct?
Yes, sir.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, it would have been cool if I was back in the States. We would have had 3 different countries, but today it's Hong Kong and Mexico. So, Jeff, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got where you are, and then we'll go into asking what your company does. But please tell us about you.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are. My name is Jeff Haka. I'm the CEO and founder of Work for Impact. My story is I initially started work as an airline pilot to transport worldwide operations, which led me to Ethiopia about 19 years ago. And I landed in Ethiopia and I was really horrified about what I saw with the plight of the children. And that's when the AIDS epidemic was really in its height. So it started me on a journey to 13 years ago, starting an organization called Beyond the Orphanage, which works with some of the most vulnerable children in the world. In those early days, I was and still am very mindful about reduction of costs. So we started as a remote. So we never had bricks and mortars for the organization. We always worked remotely in an agile environment to access on-demand, peak demand labor for the organization, and also the reduction of costs. I really saw the advantages of working that way. And it was before the cloud was really to the extent it is today. And throughout the years, I saw the advantages from the freelancers, contractual side, as well as the organizational side, up to a point where 2 years ago, I started working on Work for Impact, which leads me to where I am today.
Right. Great, Jeff. Please tell us a little bit what Work for Impact does.
Work for Impact is a freelance platform, but it's just not another freelance platform. I believe deeply in doing really good things for the world and connecting people that are very motivated to do good things for the world with organizations that really want to do good things for the world as well. So it's that connection in the middle. It's a marketplace, and it's very much about aligning people that have a passion or a purpose for a certain area, be it for homeless, be it for the environment, be it for the ocean, or whatever it may be, whatever you're passionate about as an individual, connecting them with organizations that have a very similar philosophy. And then we sit in the middle.
Interesting. I'm very excited to have a conversation with you today because there have been some prediction that say that freelance is going to be something like 50% of the workforce by 2050 or something. You probably know more details than I do. So certainly love to hear about that. But before we do, let's have Carlos introduce the show and the topic and get right into it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tullio. Jeff, I understand that today we're going to be speaking specifically, that's the topic that you chose. The world of work is changing, or in other words, we're going to be talking about disrupting the traditional model of employment, right? So
yes.
Be the first to tap into the unique needs of the growing freelance economy and the for-purpose sector. So first question that I have is, why did you choose this particular topic? Why did you think this was relevant for now, for this conversation?
I think there's a real change, and what we'll see over the next sort of 5 years is 75% of the workforce will come from the millennial generation. Of that millennial generation, 50% of them are already freelancing. And from recent surveys, 90% of millennials say they would prefer to work for a lesser salary, but for purpose. So we're going to really see that paradigm shift in the way that we actually look at work, and not just working for a salary, working for purpose. So when we go to work, we want to feel like we're doing really good things for the actual world, not just the salary. Of course, we all need to earn an income. We need to pay the rent. We need to pay the mortgage. We need to pay the groceries and so on. But also really feeling like we're making an impact on the world in what we're doing. So I think we'll see in the coming years, that paradigm shift, and something from my work with Beyond the Orphanage, I believe very passionate about.
Where are you seeing most of this drive, Jeff? Is it specific to a region or is it worldwide? What's your experience so far in terms of millennials wanting to have something that's more impactful, more purposeful in terms of their career?
I think it's worldwide. A lot of the research is from the States, of course, but very much that worldwide trend in the millennial generation, very mindful about the environment, very mindful about the future, very mindful about the children's future and the things that we're doing for the environment and for the world, the society, the betterment of the society that we live in. So we can really start to see that paradigm shift already.
So 75%, the prediction is 75% will be freelancers.
75% of the workforce by 2025.
By 2025. Wow.
We forget the oldest millennial now is 38.
Right.
Taking over from the baby boomers, taking over from Generation X, and they'll be the main focus of our workforce in years to come.
Which industry you think will have the biggest hurdle in adjusting to that new reality?
I think business is changing, and I think businesses that don't want to change that, top-down management, that don't embrace the agile, they don't embrace, the bottom-up innovation, I think they'll be the ones that will really struggle.
Right, that's an interesting thing because some of us, for example, here in Nearsoft have co-created this thing called Radicals, which is about a movement to help organizations learn how to move into basically a co-ownership, managed shared authority model, which is important to allow these kinds of structures to exist. And the biggest challenge I've seen is the structure and how companies are legally formed. There's not a whole lot of options right now to support that. There's the cooperatives that are impact focused. There's a little bit of that going on. What do you think needs to happen for organizations to be able to support this change, especially organizations that are still very command and control structure, top-down structure? What do you think they have to do, and what are some potential best practices or insights that you could share on how they could prepare for this now?
I'm by no means an expert in this, but what I feel is just to start slowly and to have small groups and pods, and for the management to see the advantages of freedom of thought, see the advantages of really encouraging people to be innovative, to encourage their creativity and giving them that space to do that. And I think once the organisation or the higher echelons of the management see that, and they can embrace the actual change and understand the advantages to the organisation, and then we'll see that change.
Yeah, we always say if you want to get there, you have to be willing to put yourself out of a job. So your platform, how does it work? How does it tie in the freelancer to an organization that has an impact focus? How does that marriage happen?
We call them impactful freelancers and impactful organizations. So a freelancer will sign up. We go through quite an extensive sign-up process. We do that for many reasons. There's unique challenges on the internet, as we all know. We want to make sure that the freelancer or the client is a freelancer who he or she says she is and has the skills that they say they do. So they go through a process, and part of that process is saying what they're really interested in, whether it's the homeless, whether it's veterans, whether it's environment, whether it's the ocean, or whatever it may be, as well as, of course, all their skills, their profile, their expertise. Same for the organisation. They'll go through, and whether it's a not-for-profit organisation, a non-government organisation, a AAA bottom line, a B corporation, whatever it may be, and what that organisation is passionate about will also be as part of the sign-up process. So you have that ability to connect in the middle with an organisation and a philosophy that you're very passionate about to work together for really exciting projects. That's empowering you as an individual for what you're passionate about to connect with organisations with that same passion and philosophy.
Great. So you're facilitating that connection, obviously, there.
Yes.
And Now you're in Hong Kong. I know you're traveling to New York sometime later this week. You're originally from Australia. In your experience living in different countries where there are very different cultures, are there some that are more prepared than others? And what are the differences? What are some of the challenges right now as it relates to enabling this more? Are there particular countries that you think are going to have more difficulty than others based on your experience and your travels?
I think so. I think, for the US, for Mexico, for Europe, for the UK, very familiar with the freelancing model, the gig economy. I think for Africa, it will take time. But for Africa, some parts of South Asia, I find it quite exciting when we remove geography from the equation. So it opens up a world for people to earn really good incomes. For example, we just did a blog recently on exactly this point on the gig economy in a developing world. And it was from a young man in Kenya, outside of Nairobi. And he wrote a blog for us. He has a master's degree in English. And he earned 15 times the minimum urban salary in Kenya, or twice the minimum salary in the US. So what we'll see, hopefully, with education and digital literacy in the developing world, is access to a worldwide network of jobs. And we'll see, hopefully, the emergence of the middle class in the developing world. So it's something I find really exciting about what's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 years.
That's a very interesting observation, because we know countries, for example, like India, where in the past 20 years have thrived by basically providing remote workforce capabilities, or even manufacturing in China or Taiwan, etc. But what you're saying is some developing countries could actually go a different route, which is more a direct relationship with the worker or contributor, versus having to organize those efforts in a typical outsourcing or manufacturing fashion.
Straight through Work for Impact, come onto the platform and then connect directly is the way it's designed. So miss out on the middleman, come straight through. Our fees are very low. We're much lower than the industry standard, because we really want to protect the workers, we want to protect the freelancers and ensure they earn a very good living salary, also working with high-level clients.
I think Laura has a really great question as it relates to trust with this, right? Laura, you want to ask the question?
Yes. So, how do you build trust with the companies that sign up for Work for Impact, and how do you build trust with freelancers that also sign up?
That's a really good question. So we go through quite an extensive screening process for the freelancers and for the clients. As we all know, on the internet, there's a lot of people, not a lot, there's a small minority, I should say, that try and game the system, that scam the system, that try and take unfair advantage of people. So we use a process of machine learning, artificial intelligence, biometrics, to making sure that individual is who they say they are. And then we go through a skills verification. So they'll go through not an inextensive verification process to make sure they have the skills they say they have. And then from the organisational side, we go through a very similar process, the identification of the organisation, and making sure they fit in our ethical model. They are an organisation we want to work with. They are the organisation that is doing good things to the world. They're not an organisation that are doing things that we would say harmful to humanity or harmful to the world. So there's a lot of work in the background of how we connect the two together, so that when you work on Work for Impact, there's that trust. We've gone through a lot of that effort to make sure that freelancer has the skills and is the person they say they have, and that organisation is a ethical organisation. Really good question. And it's something that's taken a lot of thought of how we'll actually work on that, and I think we've achieved it.
I got a question here myself. I'd like to chime in. Jeff, I personally, I've done some freelance work in the past using some other platforms like Upwork, for example. And besides, there's other things that I do besides this. And what kind of struck me at a certain point was the fact that let's call it that way, the type of clients, or the profiles of clients, are sometimes a little bit, how can I put this? There are a lot of them, they're kind of like looking for just cheap labor, really. Is, and then from my standpoint, sometimes it's more than that. It's just, you know, you need to make sure that what you're looking for is just, it's not just cheap labor, but quality. But sometimes quality is really not something that you're going to get for very little money. So it's kind of tricky, right? In that sense, how would you say that work for impact is
really
against
about quality? There's unique challenges with some of the freelancing, you know, sites, and we're very much about quality. So we're not about quantity, we're about quality. Making sure that the freelancers that are on the site are high quality. So there'll be a less number but higher quality. I've used similar sites. I put up recently an ad for a front-end developer in Vue.js, and I had 150 applicants within a matter of hours. But of those 150 applicants, the majority weren't suitable or qualified for it. It was a significant amount of time for me to work through it. So there's quite a difference. One of the many points of difference to Work for Impact is it will go through that verification process to make sure that quality of freelancers there. I think clients will really resonate towards that. The clients we work with, they want to go, when they come on Work for Impact, they'll say, actually, there's only 10 people that applied for it, but we know those 10 people are qualified and good freelancers. And then we'll see those higher salaries for quality people like you, Carlos. So come on Work for Impact, mate. Come and work for us.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And it's a very important question. There is a lot of noise on the internet. There is a lot of the race to the bottom. It's not for us. We want to have that high quality trust. Organizations come to us and they will connect with high quality freelancers. 30% of Fortune 500 companies in the US are looking at freelancing. They're looking at on-demand labor, peak demand labor, and project-based labor for that very reason. Because quality is the key.
You know, that was a really good question, Carlos, because it just made me realize companies that have a focus to make an impact on the world are less likely to want to take advantage of people. So in essence, a freelancer that's registered on this platform or is focused around this is less likely to experience that. Is that a fair assumption to make, you think, Jeff?
Absolutely. And they're the sort of organization we want to work with. The organization just wants to try and minimize the actual cost to get cheap labor at a cheap job. Is not, you know, the organization that we would inspire to work for. And on the platform, we also have a double blind rating system. So the freelancers will very quickly filter out the organizations, and the algorithms are quite stringent and weighted to allow that feedback. So if an organization is not all operating in our ethical model, other freelancers very quickly see they're not an organization to work with.
Great. Carlos, Laura, you guys have another question?
I'm
sorry.
Don't choke on us now. I know you were prompted by your experience with this orphanage to put this together. Is this something you're doing on your own, or do you have other partners? Let me rephrase that. Are you building a platform completely proprietary, or are you going to leverage the freelance network that exists, for example, in the Upworks or the Fivers and such? Do you plan to connect to these so you become a central hub for everything impact, or you plan to have its own regard?
Totally. So we built a unique platform. We really wanted something modern and fresh. We really wanted to utilize some of the open source script that's out there. We wanted to use video conferencing, not similar to what we're using now, dissimilar. Have that really good, fresh experience, making sure that when a freelancer comes on, it's a really good experience for them. It's a unique experience, same as the clients. So it's just a standalone.
Is there plans to create a model where you can put together teams, for example, to work on a project? Because I would think that's part of the challenge is if you have a bunch of freelancers and not someone leading or being a project manager and such. Is that a challenge, or is that something you're solving within the platform as well?
It won't be available for the MVP, but in the second iteration, it's definitely something we're planning on. That's a really good question. And when I built the actual building the platform, it's all a remote team. So there's unique challenges, as we all know, with remote teams, bringing it all together, different time zones. But it's something we'll work on the platform to resolve.
is there a methodology you're thinking of adopting to enable that, like Agile or some other that might work, or build something new? What's the thinking there?
Agile.
Agile.
Love Agile.
It's funny because a lot of people call themselves Agile because they do a stand-up or review, but they're not actually really following. So, okay, great. That should help a lot. And going back to the countries that are likely to have a challenge transitioning to this, I look at organizations that are very large, Fortune 100 companies, where once you have that kind of size and scope of an organization, it takes a life of its own. You have to support it for an organism of its own, right? Which often ends up not necessarily creating the right value for the marketplace, not necessarily creating the right value for the people involved, but you have obligations, financial objectives, and goals that you have to maintain once you've created this behemoth organization. In a world where that's not going to be the norm, with 75% of millennials not wanting to be participating or part of that, what are those companies just going to disappear? What's going to happen to them? What are your thoughts?
I think they have to change. I really think they have to change. So I think that traditional model will see, especially over the next 5 years, that paradigm shift towards smaller groups, smaller pods, in an agile environment. And I think it's a really good thing. I think, when I deal with some of our team and some of the young developers, and when I really listen to them, it's amazing the ideas they have. So if we're open to their ideas, to their thoughts, to their freedom of thoughts, you can see some really innovative, creative ideas. And I think organizations that just come straight top down, they miss a lot of that. And we've seen the change. We've seen the change in the larger tech companies that have come through. So, yeah, I think we'll see over the next 5 years not an insignificant change, those larger corporations. I think for a good thing.
Laura, you have another question, I think?
He's got.
Yes. So how's working with Work of Impact? How's your company's culture?
Hopefully really good. We all work remote, so we don't have bricks and mortar. So we all work online. You basically work where you want, how you want. I don't track time. And then all we look at is just getting the work done. Very open to feedbacks, to thoughts, to small pivots. So I think we're very inclusive. We're very tight as a group. With any team, it takes time to get the dynamics right. But our developers are phenomenal. We have the most amazing team for our UX, UI, for design, for human-computer interface, our project manager, business analyst, really smart people. So, I'm very grateful for the actual team. And, they lead it. I'm just sort of there to help guide the ship a little bit.
So would you say that the way you're building your company, your platform, abides exactly by the way you're touting it? For example, so totally remote, totally distributed. You mentioned that there's no brick and mortar, right?
Yeah.
So in that context, what would you say that has been? I would like to personally ask you, what is the greatest challenge you have experienced? Because that very thought has crossed my mind at some point. Hey, I want to create my own thing. How do I do it? How can I make a difference? How can I create something of value in a totally remote setting, in a totally virtual environment? So what if you were to advise someone like me, like thinking of doing something, what should be on the lookout for in a cautionary?
You've got to really plan and just have that concept, but get quite granular with the planning to understand what you want to achieve. Mm-hmm. What is the MVP? What am I going to? And then everything takes longer and costs more than what you actually budget. Mm-hmm. As you know, the teams you're working in, it takes time to create a really good team to get the dynamics. Mm-hmm. So really thinking about the team, and if you're working without geography as a limitation, really thinking about your time zones and using to your advantage. For example, you've got people coding on the opposite time zone, and then you can review their code in the morning and then push. So you can really use geography in many levels to your advantage. But any one piece of advice is really plan things. in enormous detail, and then really think about your team and work with your team and really listen to your team. Get people that are really smart and let them be smart.
Laura, I think you had a question about loyalties.
Laura's she's got great questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you build loyalty with your employees?
Well, can I riff off of that a little bit? So this is about building loyalties with people that are not employees, right? So that adds a little element of a little more difficulty. So how do you do that?
So some people in Work for Impact work full-time. So they're freelance, they work full-time for us, or others are on demand or peak demand. So they freelance, they have different jobs, but they'll always work a percentage of time for Work for Impact. So to build the loyalty, I think it's just really listening to people, to making sure they're compensated to a level that's fair and equitable, and to really encouraging them, giving positive feedback, positive reinforcement. If someone does a good job, tell them, you're really smart, you're doing a really good job, I'm really thankful for what you're doing. And helping them to understand what we're doing is something we're doing together, which is quite exciting, which is, from the charity world, what I running Beyond the Orphanage, it's very inclusive for all the people that work with us. So this is what we're doing for the betterment of the world for the children. Very much the same for Work for Impact. We're building something very exciting together. You're really part of this journey. You're a very important part of this journey. Whatever your role is, you're an incredibly important part of what we're doing together, and that ownership of it. So again, a great question from you.
We're up on time. always starts to get really fun. It sounds like you're creating something fantastic and amazing. And tell us a little bit about your journey building this, words of wisdom you'd like to share with companies sitting on the fence who may not realize this is coming. This is coming, right?
Yeah.
Pick up, this is coming. Words of wisdom you'd like to share.
Just to really look at the way you work, really look at the structure of management, and don't be frightened to embrace change. Really encourage change, really encourage the freedom of thought from people that are junior in the organization. Don't be frightened. It will really help your organization.
Well, it's been great to have you as a guest.
Thanks.
Love to hear more as this progresses. Love to hear more stories, more success stories, especially if you end up having some organization that learn to adopt this and the pain process of doing that. We want to hear those use cases too, because those are great stories to share. Any other questions, guys? Otherwise, I'll pass it to Carlos to wrap up.
No, I don't think we have. The only thing, I don't have any questions, but what I do have is an announcement. And this is about next week. Jeff, I think you kindly introduced me to Joel Friedlander, right?
Yes.
If I recall correctly. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mentioned this because Joel Friedlander, he is the founder of a company called Red Guava, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to be having him as a guest also next week. By the way, I don't have the topic or theme for next week's conversation, but so I'm going to ping Joel. Joel, if you're listening, please send it over as soon as possible. And we look forward to having Joel Friedlander, founder of Red Guava, as a guest next week, right here on Dojo Live, same time, same place.
Joel is an incredibly inspiring man, and he's a mentor to me. So I'm definitely going to be tuning in. He is one of the great guys of the world, and a lot of my thought processes come from Joel. He's
yeah.
So if you're an audience watching, we guarantee you it'll be
next week. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the cool thing about this, guys, is that specifically Red Guava is going to be about making great software. Okay, so that's what Red Guava is about. And they're about being a globally distributed team, but the focus is going to be making great software. That's what this company does. So I look forward to that conversation. So as soon as I have the topic, I'll share it on all our social media channels and I look forward to having you all as viewers next week. So stay tuned.
Thanks so much for the time. It's lovely to meeting you all.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jeff. Bye-bye.